All right, everybody, welcome to the Locked On Avalanche podcast. On today's episode, it's going to be a playoff frenzy, so to speak. We're going to be focusing on the Eastern Conference, the Western Conference, who made the playoffs last year that could miss it this year, who missed the playoffs last year that could make it this year, who's on a trajectory down to the basement of the league. We're going to go around the league and kind of talk about this stuff. So tune in right now, another episode of Locked On Avalanche.
You're Locked On Avalanche, your daily podcast on the Colorado Avalanche. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Locked On Avalanche podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Chris Maselli. With me, as always, Mr. Shaggy Von Doom, Kyle Sullivan. Thank you for tuning in and making it your first listen of the day. That's always appreciated. Make sure to follow us on our social media outlets, LOPN_Avalanche on Twitter X, Locked On Avalanche on Instagram. Questions, comments, concerns, and opinions, lockedonavalanche@gmail.com. And follow us over on our YouTube channel, over on YouTube. Hit subscribe, get notified when a new show goes live. And make sure to subscribe to our subtext. Link to that is in the show notes below. And when you subscribe, you chat with Kyle and I one-on-one. So today's episode, as you can see on our rundown, is it's playoff heavy. We're going to kind of look into the futures in terms of, the end of this season. We're already going there, Kyle.
It's already over. What a year it was.
We've simmed the whole thing and we're going right to the playoffs. And we're taking this from the rest of that Athletic fan survey that we did a handful of those questions last week. And now we're going to kind of finish those up. And the ones that we left were all really playoff heavy. So we're going to jump right back into it. Why wait? And we'll start over in the Eastern Conference, that East Coast bias that we were talking about on a recent episode. We're going to do it. We're going to start in the East Coast.
The East, first and foremost, as it should be.
Yeah. We're just going alphabetically is what we'll do. So the question is, pick one of the 2023 Eastern Conference playoff teams that you're most confident will miss the postseason this upcoming year. And overwhelmingly, for the East and the West, it's overwhelming who was the number one team. But in the East, overwhelmingly is the New York Islanders at 57%. Next to them at number two, the Boston Bruins. Talk about, nothing's happened yet, clearly, but in the eyes of the fan, that is a fall from an epic season that they had that ended dramatically. They only got just shy of 12%, 11.8%. So not a lot of people, but to be number two on this list is a little bit surprising to me. But when you do look at what happened to them in the offseason, and that is a team in transition right now, is it enough to miss the playoffs next year? With the way that the East is, anything is possible. So they're at 11.8. Florida, who was in the Stanley Cup final, is number three. So that's how crazy the East is. The team that had an epic season is number two. The team that was in the Stanley Cup final is number three. And then at 6.5, they all make it again. 5.3 is the New York Rangers, 4% the Lightning, 3% the Maple Leafs, 2% the Devils, and 0.7% is Carolina. Thoughts on this here?
After seeing the results, I find myself in the very, 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 very slim minority.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like the show is over for the Tampa Bay Lightning.
I'm with you, man.
Yeah.
I am with you. Yeah, I think a lot happened to all of these teams, with the exception of, really like the Devils and the Hurricane. Like, they got better, you could say. Yeah. Even Toronto's not going anywhere. I think the Rangers will hang on. I don't think the Rangers got better, but I think they're good enough to make the playoffs. Florida, I think I think they'll be okay. The Bruins, I think, have just another year left that they'll hang around. But I'm with you. I think Tampa Bay is going to fight. They're going to have to fight tooth and nail to make to be the Tampa team that we've been accustomed to for these last handful of seasons. I agree with you.
Yeah, we were talking about Boston and everybody retiring. Nothing happened with Tampa of significant value, and that team got older, which is also hard to comprehend. But I think
Yeah.
age is going to start catching up with this team, and I think the show is over for Tampa. The Tampa that everybody knows is going to be a
Well,
bygone.
I think the one interesting thing, and this is true for a lot of teams, I think you're going to see some teams have an off year and have a
Mm.
year that they struggle. And I think that could be Tampa, but I'm not ready to close the door on them for anything beyond this year, because if the cap goes up, they get a few extra $1 million to play with, they can be right back in the thick of things next year. Not saying that they're going to be a cream of the league or anything like that, but a lot of teams were hamstrung.
Yeah.
They were one of them. So they was going to be very difficult for them to improve their team. But, they still have, Braden Point is I think one of the most underrated players in the league, if you ask me. They still have stars, and when you have that guy in net, you're still going to be in it. So I think they take a step back this year. Next year, we'll talk about that next year. But I'm with you. I think Tampa might be on the outside looking in, and that's weird to say right now.
Yeah.
We'll jump to the next one. Pick one young Eastern Conference team on the rise that you're most confident will break out and make the playoffs next year. The Buffalo Sabres.
Yep. You hung up there for just a second, but I believe you're going to be leading off with the Buffalo Sabres. They had a 55.4%.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Continue. Go ahead.
You had the Buffalo Sabres at 55.4%, which I think the Tage Thompson effect has something to do with that. I'm pretty sure it's not the Erica Johnson effect that really swayed everybody voting there.
Yeah.
But I find that number a little inflated, but you can continue on with number two.
Yeah. So, like you said, Buffalo's number one. Detroit is at just under, we'll call it 14%. None of them will make it because the East is too competitive, is 13.5%. Ottawa at 10.8, and Columbus gets some love here, 4.7, but they're on there. So, which is an improvement from what they were last year. So maybe they're a team on the rise. They're obviously a few years away from, I think, considering them a breakout team. But a lot of people are really kind of behind the Buffalo Sabres this year. Are you one of those people?
I have a feeling our vote is going to be the same on this, and I believe we're both not believing in the Buffalo Sabres.
It's not that I don't believe in them. I just think that people are a little bit too much like on their good side. Like I still need to see something from like you see. I say you still need to see something, and you saw little bits of it, but they don't know how to like when they're in the thick of like a playoff hunt. Are they going to be that team that, because they haven't been there in so long, just crumbles?
Yeah.
That's true for a lot of these teams. But I don't know. Like, I just feel like Detroit is better set up to last for the duration of a season for this year than Buffalo is.
Yep.
Maybe Buffalo has a brighter future, long-term future than Detroit. But just for this year, I think Detroit brought in the right guys who have been in other places, enough of those guys that have been in other places where they know how to to play during like that towards the end of the season when it's like really meaningful. And if you're in the thick of a race, sure, Buffalo has some of those guys. But I just don't feel like, I still think Buffalo is a year away, and maybe I'll be wrong in that, but I still feel like next year, I think then I'll be kind of like singing the praises a little bit more of Buffalo, saying like now they are ready to take that next step. I think we've been saying that about Detroit for so long. I think they finally do it this year for the Red Wings.
Yeah, I think Buffalo, I think they're a little bit farther away. I think it's like 2 or 3 years once they figure out how to build a team around the talent they have. Detroit is built for a push. And if it's one of those tight races at the end of the year, Detroit knows what they need to do and how the team needs to look. And you could see with the moves they made this offseason, they're prepared for that.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to go as far as Buffalo is like 2 or 3 years. I think that's because they're young. They are young, right? And I think that's maybe part of the reason why they brought in a guy like Eric Johnson to kind of, put a lot of those young guys under his wing, especially on the defensive end.
True.
You know what I mean? So I think that only helps them down the road. But I don't know. I don't know. It's just a gut feeling I have that they will be improved. They will no longer be that pushover team that is just, at the bottom of the standings, which we'll get to that question in a little bit. But as far as a playoff spot, I think it's one more year for Buffalo. They will be close though. They will be in it later in the playoff hunt than they have in a while. Let's see. So, all right, why don't we hear from FanDuel first, and then we'll kind of ask these same questions over on the West Coast. But first, this episode is brought to you by FanDuel, and the football season, it's right around the corner. I mean, can we say it's here? I mean, even though it's the preseason, we can say it's here, right?
It's here.
Because
I feel it in the air. It's right here.
It's something about the NFL preseason. No other preseason is as touted and as hyped up as the NFL season. And it's not that the games are good. It's just you don't have many of them before the NFL season is here, and then the fall season's here, and then before you know it, it's football on Thanksgiving, football on Christmas, and you can bet all of these things over at FanDuel, and they have a killer event going on over there right now. You can bet a Super Bowl winner right now. You can pick who you think is going to win the Super Bowl right now, and that team will carry you through the regular season, because anytime that team wins in the regular season, you get bonus bets. So if you want to bet the Denver Broncos to win the Super Bowl, anytime they go, where they're going to go undefeated during the regular season. So every time that they win, you get bonus bets in your account. Kyle's shaking his head in acknowledgement of that statement.
Yeah. Yep.
Yes. So just pick any team to win the Super Bowl, and you'll get bonus bets for every victory during the regular season. And you can use those bonus bets on the spread, player props, over-unders, you name it. How many missed extra points the Denver Broncos kicker will have because he's the one that missed all those kicks for the Dallas Cowboys last year.
Oh, man.
Kyle loves that. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and start earning bonus bets with America's #1 sportsbook. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Go check it out right now. Get that Super Bowl winner in. All right, let's head back to the poll, and we're going to shift over to the Western Conference. So same question for the West. Pick a playoff team that you're most confident will miss the postseason next year. And Winnipeg, by miles, 67.5% is the #1 team that people think will miss the playoffs that made it last year, followed by Minnesota at 10.3, followed by Seattle, 7.6. They all make it again, 4.7, Los Angeles at 4.1, and then Dallas at 1.3, Edmonton 0.8, Vegas 0.6, Avalanche 0.4. What do you got?
This one, when you're talking about Buffalo, you have this gut feeling. This is something I've had even with all the offseason moves they made, I'll be sitting at 1.4%. I don't think Dallas makes it to the playoffs this year.
Wow.
The same discussion we had around Tampa Bay.
Yeah.
Still true. It's the same calendar for the Dallas Stars. And Matt Duchene is not going to save your team. And I feel like that team, they ran out of gas last year. And I feel like with the improvements the rest of the conference has made, I feel like there's only so many teams that could get in the playoffs. And I don't feel like Dallas is going to be that team.
Well, I'll be interested to see what your answer is on the next question then, like who replaces them. I don't know. Like Dallas, I'm pretty confident can make the postseason, and it's because it's the West is kind of the opposite of the East. In the East, there's so many teams that are really going to be fighting for those spots. In the West, sure, obviously you're going to have teams, but it's a little bit more like finite in the West. So do I think all these teams make it again? I'm kind of with if you're going to force me to pick a team, I'm going to pick Winnipeg. I'm absolutely in agreement with that. I think Winnipeg is on the way down in
Interesting.
a big way. I don't think we're going to be hearing from Winnipeg for a handful of years.
I have a feeling that Winnipeg's kind of like in this state right now, kind of like Minnesota's been for the last couple years.
Mhm.
But I feel like they're going to be hovering in this like first round bounce, and they're going to improve from there. And I think they're going to be pretty good in the next, depending on what they do with Connor Hellebuck.
That's the thing. I just don't think. I think they're just going to be in free fall, and he's going to want out of there. He's too good to want to hang around and do this rebuild there, where that's a struggle to get free agents to really want to go there. So, yeah, I'm with the Winnipeg crowd in this one, and I think everybody else makes it. I think Seattle should make it again. Minnesota, I think, will probably make it. Maybe as a wild card, but I still think they're good enough to make it. So I think the majority, I think while the East, we could see another we did last year. There was kind of like this big flip and some other teams that made it that didn't the year before. You might see that again this year in the East, while in the West might stand pretty pat with maybe one team switching, and that could be Winnipeg. So that is the question for the non-playoff teams from the West. Who could break out and make the playoffs next season? 29.5% said Calgary. 25% said none. So kind of going down the road that I'm feeling, with the exception of Winnipeg. 22.8 said St. Louis. 13.8 Vancouver, and just a touch under 2% is Nashville. So a lot of people think that was kind of an off year for Calgary. And they should be able to turn it around and at least grab a playoff spot. I'm not 100% sold on that, but I could see it happening. Wouldn't surprise me if it happened.
This is where I had Dallas falling out and I have Calgary going in.
Mm-hmm.
That it just because Calgary was chasing right down to the final couple games, and then they didn't make it. But I feel like Calgary is poised to make the playoffs this year. The thing that surprised me about these results, I would have flipped Nashville and Vancouver. By the way, this is twice we mentioned Vancouver Canucks. You're welcome. They still exist. They are a team. I bet you haven't thought about them the entire offseason. So here's your moment to shine, Vancouver. They have done nothing. That Nashville is at least trying to put a team together. Vancouver, does everybody remember the dumpster fire they were at the end of the season last year when everybody wanted out? That team still has to put a team on the ice. I feel like they might be the worst team in hockey next year.
You think so?
I do.
Really? I remember going into last year, they were like the sexy pick because of the way they finished the year before, when Bruce Boudreau took over, and they played exceptionally well under him, and everybody thought Vancouver was the it team, and they just got out of the gates horrible. Not for, I think they had, what was it, like the first 7 games of the season, they blew a 2-goal lead. I think it was 7, like NHL record. So, and they just you can't recover from that.
No,
you couldn't recover. So, but it's just amazing how it's just continued to fall for them. Some people think that they could be on a little bit on the rebound. I just, where they are right now, I think they stay there. I don't see an improvement from them. I don't really see them going any lower than they did last year, but you never know if like you said, seems like some people do want out of there. And I think it just is a weird situation in Vancouver right now, but they're not doing anything for me to really say, like, I'm going to put them in the playoffs next year. I don't see that happening. I think the easy pick here is Calgary. I think that's the easy pick. What else we got here? So let's see, which 2023 NHL playoff team will be basement dwellers, which they list as bottom 10 in the NHL by the 2025-2026 season. So these are playoff teams last year. Playoffs? That in 2 seasons, you won't even remember that they made the playoffs in recent memory. Winnipeg is number 1 on here, 55, almost 56%, followed by the Islanders at 43, followed by the Bruins at 41, followed by the Lightning at 22, and then you got Minnesota, Rangers, Maple Leafs, Panthers, Knights, Stars, Kings, Kraken, Oilers, Hurricanes, Devils, and the Avalanche are the lowest at 1.9. Again, seeing the Bruins at number 3 right there. I think people are kind of feeling like they made a go of it, and now we're going to see a team in transition. And I think that the Bruins are going to be a bottom 10 team? No, because those Massachusetts teams make sure they are relevant.
Yeah.
The fan base demands it. And it's just like the nature of the beast for Massachusetts teams and Boston teams. They're always in it. They will have a bad season or two and bounce right back, because it's just the way things work up there for any sport. You don't see Boston teams really bottom dwelling for a long period of time. And by the letter of this question, it's like they're just asking for 25-26 for one season. Could they be for that one season? Sure. But don't expect it to last long if they do.
I think it's physically impossible for the Boston Bruins to be in the bottom 10. I think it's impossible for them to be a bad team, because they're such a destination team with the history. Right. It's one of those at free agency, if they come calling, who doesn't want to be a Boston Bruin? I mean, it's a cool place to be.
Oh, definitely. But I think it would be less about that and more about the ownership saying, like, we're taking a step back for a year, and they won't seek guys to bring in. And
they still have such a DNA where it's hard for that to happen with who's still remaining as a Boston Bruin for here until 25-26.
Yeah, I know.
That's why I would put
2 years from now where they get 2 years older. And go ahead, because what you just said is true for them too, for the Islanders. Go ahead.
The Islanders are old, and they don't have the core, and they don't have the talent that Boston has to fall back on when those players do get old and retire. Like, the Islanders are confusing, like we were just talking about Vancouver. Mm-hmm. The Islanders are such an enigma, and I feel like next year is going to be their swan song when it comes to relevancy and playoffs. And then it's going to be a fall of epic proportions. And I feel like by 25-26, they're going to be begging for the fish stick logo, any reason to buy a ticket for the Islanders, because I feel like they have some serious problems on their hands.
Yeah, the Islanders seem to me to be one of those franchises that they make a go of it every few years. It's not like they try to continually, like, they're going to put a team out there that they feel can compete. And when they don't go blow things up. They'll be like, well, we're terrible. We'll own that. And we're going to slowly and methodically build our team back up. They don't do the Vegas stuff and just go after big names. Although they did make some pretty good moves in the past couple trade deadlines to make a go of it. Hasn't worked. So I just don't think it's going to keep happening. It's just, and I know it's different ownership and stuff there now, but or people that are like running the team, but I don't know. You don't have confidence. And if the Islanders, if this thing goes south for the Islanders, you don't really have confidence that they're going to go like kind of right the ship and go make some more big moves. They tried it, didn't work. They're not going to keep trying it. So, no. But it's amazing to see, with the exception of Winnipeg, who's at number 1. You have the top of this list: Islanders, Bruins, Lightning, Wild, Rangers, Maple Leafs are up there. People are feeling like there could be a shift, league wide from the teams at the top, maybe going towards the bottom in a couple of years. Pretty crazy.
Then those Columbus voters might have a chance. So they might make the playoffs. So
the next question: pick one NHL team that you are most confident will win a Stanley Cup at any point before 2030. And Avalanche fans might not be too happy with this, but they are not number 1 on here. Carolina is at 16%, followed by the Devils, followed by Edmonton, followed by the Avalanche at 10.2%. The thing that I find interesting about this, on the bottom of this list, number 32, is Calgary. Calgary is at 0.1%, tied with Arizona. So the same team that a lot of people feel can turn it around and make a playoff run this year, people also don't have confidence they can do anything with that and they have no shot at winning a championship. I just found that very, very interesting.
It's because Calgary doesn't have a household name.
Nazem Kadri.
Why you have to do that to my heart?
So, but I mean, focus on the top ones here. I mean, Carolina, I think that is a team a lot of people feel should be able to win one in the next 7 years. Nothing is guaranteed. But yeah, you can put them up there. I absolutely think the Avalanche can win another one. How could you not feel like the Avalanche could not win another Stanley Cup in 7 years? Give this to, you're going to tell me in 7 years this team can't, at least you got to think they at least can get to another Stanley Cup. They have to.
Yeah, I feel it's almost like a gimme. Like if you were putting the FanDuel odds on that, it'd almost be a push. Like it's understood the Avs are going to win another cup in the next 7 years. It's just kind of one of those, yeah, they're going to do it again. And the league kind of understands that they're gearing up to do it again. The Carolina at number 1 is confusing because every year this is their team and it just never happens.
And I think that's when you ask a question like this, I think people will answer it by looking at like the best team who hasn't won one in a little while. I mean, Carolina has, but like of current, you're right. Like of current teams that you're looking at them, you're like, they should have won one by now, but they haven't. And you got to say that's Carolina, even though they haven't made it with this current crop of players. I think that's just like that sexy pick, because if the Avalanche hadn't won one, they probably would be number 1 on this year. But because, people feel like they've already won it, we'll go with the route that the next best team. And you could even argue that that's not Carolina, but they are set up well to make a run for it. I mean, I don't think you can deny that. They just have to get there. They just got to get there. Now, that conference final issues that they've been having, can they overcome that? Because that's going to get in the back of your head now.
Yeah, that Carolina, I would like to, it's a prove it thing for me with Carolina. Because when it goes to number 2 on that list, I feel like that is the team that has proven it the most with what they are putting together. Like, there is no way you can't say that team and its DNA, it's not poised to make some serious noise.
They are, and I'm a little bit surprised they're at number 2, not because they're a team on the rise, right? But last year was the first year that people really took notice of the Devils. So can they make, that's a pretty quick jump to go from missing the playoffs to that turnaround that they had, which is a great turnaround, to now winning the Stanley Cup in a matter of 2 years. Hey, I mean, they have the team to do it. If they were in the West, I think they'd have maybe a little bit even more shot. I mean, then the Avalanche are standing in their way. But in the East, that's tough.
Yeah,
it's very tough. And the final question is pick a team that look the most hopeless in terms of becoming a cup contender at any point before 2023. And you have Arizona at number 1 by far, 61.4%. The Sharks at 30, Winnipeg at 29, the Flyers at 26, and then it goes on. Canucks, Ducks, Blue Jackets, Islanders are in there, Flames, Caps, Penguins, Canadians, Preds, Blackhawks, and St. Louis. So just no shot whatsoever. I don't know how you put any other team on top of this other than Arizona. Just don't know.
Arizona, it makes the most sense. Will they even be around by that point? It's a wonderful question. I also am scratching my head why the Flyers are so low. That'd be 1B for me.
You think that they won't win one?
Yeah, they are just as hopeless. We were just talking about how great the East is.
Yeah.
And all this that is moving in the East and how top heavy it is. The Flyers are they're just dead in the water
right now. There. I mean, you got to think 7 years out. Again, how we were talking with Boston, Philly is similar. Like, Philly will not stand for a losing team for 7 more seasons.
When was the last time Philly has won a cup? When is the last time Philly has done? it's
I
been
mean, but it's cup contending. Like the question is not win a cup; it's cup contending. Will Philly be a playoff team in 7 years? I would have every reason to believe that they absolutely could be a playoff team in 7 years. They could probably be a playoff team in 5 years if they do this thing right, because they have to be. They have to be. That fan base will not stand for it.
but that
So,
ownership, I don't trust that ownership in Philly.
I don't have a problem. I think they'll be fine. I think like they're a team in transition right now, but they hopefully are transitioning out of it. But yeah, they are a bottom dwelling team right now. I just don't see that hanging around. Philly won't do that for too long. They definitely won't. But if you gave me, $100,000 and said you had to pick one team here that will not make the playoffs for the next 7 years, I'm putting that on Arizona and not even thinking twice about it. I don't think Arizona has any chance.
What does that say about the West?
Yeah.
If Arizona makes their way in, what has gone on in the West?
But think about that. For 7 years, for the next 7 years, I am pretty darn confident Arizona will not make a single playoff. Even the Sharks that are at 30%, I wouldn't put money on that for the Sharks. Sharks could turn things around if over the next 7 years. That's a long time to be bad. Most teams at least can get in a playoff spot one of those years. Same thing with Winnipeg. Even though we think they're on a downswing, they could. Flyers definitely could. Canucks, who knows? But even the Blue Jackets.
Yeah,
that's just too long of a period to say the team is going to be this bad for this long, except for Arizona. Like they might have a good team here and there and be a little bit more competitive, but to compete for a playoff spot, no way.
Yeah, I feel like as confident as we were saying the Colorado Avalanche will win one by 2030, I feel just as confident saying Arizona will not win one by 3030.
Now, that is a futures bet over on FanDuel. So, all right, that's going to wrap it up for today, everybody. So fire away in the comments section. What do you guys think? Who do you think could miss the playoffs? Who do you think could make it? Or teams that made it the previous year or didn't make it the previous year? Fire away. Want to hear what you guys think about this. For Friday, we will be back on our road trip, and we are headed to Nashville. We're going to do a crossover with the host of Locked On Nashville Predators, which we've already recorded, so it's in the hopper waiting to go. Always fun one when we talk to those two over there. So make sure you tune into that one on Friday. But for today, that's going to wrap it up. Thank you for tuning in, making it your first listen of the day. That is always appreciated. And for Mr. Shaggy Von Doom, Kyle Sullivan, I am Chris Maselli. This is the Locked On Avalanche podcast, and we'll see you guys on Friday.